Hello, and welcome once again. J76NY here, and this is episode number 9 of our douchebag playthrough on Suzerain. Welcome back to Swordland, Anton Rayne's Swordland. Last episode we went full-blown in favor of the Old Guard and Orso Hawker and his cronies on the Supreme Court. He informed us we're going to have to take some drastic measures in terms of curtailing some freedoms, which I don't think Anton has a problem with. We left off. Our advisors are probably not going to be too happy about things, but that's okay. This is, like I said, Anton Rayne's Swordland. So, Hawker was in the Maroon Palace, says the Lockhaven Times. Chief Justice Orso Hawker has been spotted entering the Maroon Palace. Our sources are intrigued by the timing of his visit that happened last night, after the increased conversation around the so-called democratic reforms, which we kind of put the nix on by shutting down the reform committee. Historically, Mr. Hawker usually does not frequent the palace unless for official business, and this was certainly an unplanned visit. Clearly, there must be something he wants out of this. Our speculation is that he has something to do with the reforms. More to come later. Alright, let's take a look up here. Chancellor Hagel has released a statement through official channels urging calm on the Rumberg-Swordland dispute. General Secretary has also mentioned that the climbing tension should immediately be de-escalated to protect the peace and prosperity of Eastern Mercopa. That's about what we have to do before we head on out to the next, the next chapter. So let's continue, see what happens, see what the consequences are. Trials of democracy, especially when you kind of shuffle it off into the back drawer. All right. A lot to do with the trials of democracy. Let's read the newspaper first. Maybe we should go and get some of this stuff first so we know what they're talking about. Narbel reports lack of hospitals. Mayor of Narbel has reported that their hospitals are overburdened and they are unable to respond to the needs of the citizens. He complained about months-long waiting lists for terminally ill patients, on top of capacity issues. It is also noted that the facilities are still largely using outdated technology. Sordish resistance in sanctuaries. This from Sarna, I believe. Security units have arrested 3 priests at 2 different Nuridi sanctuaries in Sarna after finding links to insurgent activities. Reports came from an elderly man who wanted to pray in peace, but instead found him invited to join the Blutish Freedom Front by a state-sanctioned priest. Further incidents indicate that the BFF is pushing for a local recruitment drive in different sanctuaries across the region. Recession hits farmers again. As per the latest news from Lockhaven, the farming industry has taken another hit as a result of the recession. There are reports that 16% of all wheat in Lockhaven is rotting in barns due to lack of buyers. Farmers are requesting additional funds from the government to survive the year. Well, we got a potential war on our hands, so Young Swords and NFP flags burned. Massive counter-protests against Young Swords, led by a local politician known to be aligned with the Red Youth, resulted in many injuries and property damage. Subsequently, Young Swords and National Front Party flags were burnt, which caused tensions to escalate. Local police dispersed the protesters by sundown. Boren. Communist books burned in Boren. Local residents gathered thousands of books that they claimed to be spreading communism and Malinovist propaganda at the Century Park in Boren and set the books on fire. Aggressive slogans targeting the Red Youth, the Workers' Party of Bludia, and the Communist Party of Sordland were shouted. Youth groups from local party offices of the USP and NFP also joined in with the burning. Fire department was dispatched and protesters dispersed on their own. That's good news. Burning commie books, I guess. Alright, well, let's read the newspaper. There one. Police have arrested the principal of a high school in Narbel in southern Bergia, where 12 students died after eating a free meal laced with pesticide. What the fuck? Oh, Jesus. Students aged between 15 and 17 died after eating a lunch of a local dish of zabla cooked at the school in a poverty-stricken city. Time for women to stand up, says the radical. Women in Sordland have always been under pressure by the unequal society and the system of discrimination that was built by old men who only knew about war, says Katrina Horton. Or if she's the wife of is not. Or heard of her. New to this playthrough, apparently. Or I just don't remember. It's a possibility, too. Sordish League of Women is organizing a number of rallies across Sordland to bring the change Sordland desperately needs. It's time for Sordland to realize that we have to respect every individual regardless of their sex and strive to become an advanced civilization. Women have long been pushed to the corners of social and political life. To address this change, a new campaign was started all over Sordland to establish a framework for women's rights. Sordish League of Women is organizing rallies with the support of the Minister of Education, Kiera Walda, and members of the Assembly, Rena Horton. Everybody is equal according to the Sordish Constitution, but there's no protection against discrimination, which only reinforces the inequity in practice. Questioning Solist education. The newly unveiled SIPA Education Performance Report unveiled a sad reality about Sordland's abysmal state in comparison to many countries. Sordland was rated 39th out of 68 nation that were assessed by the OMEC organization. Primary gauge of the quality of education is made from a sample of 16-year-olds from each nation and their capacity in fields like math, history, chemistry, and many others. One of the key issues was seen as the strong focus on history and citizenship classes, leaving little time for scientific fields. Minister Walda often mentioned the gaps in the system in her assembly debates before she joined the cabinet. This is also supported by one of our editors, a professor from Holsword State, who has been critical of the situation in secondary education. SIPA reports reveal the damning truth that Solist education, based on the principle of statism, nationalism, republicanism, poisons the bright minds of our children. Okay? Upcoming government budget changes. As the top economy experts in the country, we have been watching the upcoming changes to the government budget very closely. President Anton Rayne's first internal economic challenge lies ahead, and we will see if he can prove his capabilities as a leader who can think ahead. Potential ramifications of diverting the funding to certain governmental branches. I'm assuming they're talking about the military, which is totally what I'm going to do. Because Rumberg. Van Horten blames Volksland for the missing fishing vessel, and this is where the tension between these guys start to ramp up. We want to be friends with Volksland. On Tuesday morning, Agnolia's Prime Minister Van Horten made a statement denouncing Volksland for the missing vessel, hull number ARV-02, blah, blah, blah. Our dutiful Coast Guards have rescued a crew member of the missing vessel. Through his statement, we had learned the ship's unfortunate end was none other than the Volksland Navy. Jeez. Right. Barbecue with Franc. Here we go. Bonding time with the sun. See if we can piss him off today. I'm sure we can. Doesn't seem to take much with that boy. It was a Saturday afternoon, my first break from work in what felt like years, and the weather couldn't have been more perfect. Trying to keep my mind off the upheaval sparked by the circus assassination, we're still worried about that shit. I lit the backyard grill. Monica and Deanna were out shopping for craft supplies, and I'd given the staff the day off. That was nice of me. It was just myself and Frank at home. Wasn't sure how he felt about me at the moment, but I did know how he felt about barbecued ribs. Our cooks had left some marinating in the refrigerator. Sure enough, as soon as Frank glimpsed the grill and the meat, he stepped outside to join me. Cook was finally out of his room. Whoops, misclick. Oh well. See what I mean? Don't get any ideas, Dad. I'm only here for the ribs. That, my boy, is how bribery works. There we go. But you're going to have to work for him. Help me fan these flames. Children who talk back to their fathers don't get dinner. Fan these flames with you. That's how bribery works. There we go. What a great example you're setting. It's politics, Frank. How does he know about the bribe I took? I didn't say bribery was good, did I? Well, not going to go with that one. It's politics, Frank. You're old enough to learn the ways of the world. It worked, didn't it? Everybody has their price. Remember that. Looked like he was going to say something, but quickly closed his mouth and nodded. Point taken. It was rare for Frank to agree with anything I said nowadays. I turned to tend to the fire. Maybe I could turn him into a tyrant just by force of will. Here, let me try. He grabbed the fan and started quickly waving it over the coals. The fire roared to life. He turned to look at me with a grin on his face as if he was expecting praise. Don't act like you've done something special for him. Started a fire. He gave me a blank stare and then turned his eyes away. I actually feel guilty about some of these choices I have to make here. I realized my throat was parched. There was a 6-pack of beer in the kitchen. Let's get drunk, Frank. He looked at me in disbelief. You mean I can? But Mom told me. He stopped himself, quickly ran inside and returned with 2 beers. He cracked them open, clinked the bottles, and gazed at the city skyline. For a moment, my thoughts flashed back to my childhood and my relationship with my own father. My father was a poor man who struggled to provide for us on his meager income. He put me to work on the farm long before I was Frank's age. Even then, we couldn't always make ends meet. Yet we were always close as a family. Now that I was president, I knew Frank would never face the same hardships I had. I couldn't deny that I felt a bit jealous, and I'm going to take it out on him every chance I get. Can I ask you something, Dad? It's just, I feel like there's so much you've been hiding from me about your past, about what's going on right now. Like at dinner that night after the ball, you told me everything was under control, but it wasn't, was it? You know what happened in the 20s, we learned all about it in school. Now that the protests and riots, is this going to be the same thing? Dad, is there going to be a civil war in Sordland? Maybe. I'll never let that happen. No matter what. But what was it like back then? Uncle Peter said the two of you went through a lot. I'm not a kid anymore, you can tell me. Before I could gather my thoughts, the familiar images started flashing before my eyes. I went into a full-blown PTSD rage and whipped Frank with the spatula. Across the face. Wait. Images of soldiers advancing towards me and my friends, weapons drawn, of people I knew, friends and neighbors being dragged through the streets and murdered in alleyways. That little girl's face. Those were dark times, Frank. Let's talk about it. Frank leaned forward in his chair, his eyes wide. And then change your mind. Want some attention? Never mind, I don't want to talk to you, you dweeb. What do we want to talk about? Tell Frank about the coup in 27 or the Civil War? Talk about the Civil War. Right after I met your mother. We had both joined the same political debate group to push for change after the coup of 27. Eventually I had become convinced I wasn't doing enough, so I joined the Young Swords. Tell Frank about the clash between Luderin and Reichard. Then one night it happened. 2 different factions in the army, one of them led by a fascist general, Luderian, and the other by Socialist General Rickard, started fighting against each other. It was a bloodbath. Nowhere was safe. We organized a protest one day against Rickard. We were fed up with the army toying with the country again. Tell them about the girl. It was horrible. They were waiting for us. Soldiers started beating and shooting at everybody and plowing their trucks into the crowd. Amid the chaos, there was this girl. Never forget her face. I tried to save her, but I couldn't reach her in time. I didn't try and save her. I just watched her get run over. That's enough for today. It's okay. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have asked you about it. I don't want to talk about the coup of 27. I know I don't understand how easy my life is sometimes. Franc hesitated, then moved over to where I was sitting and gave me an awkward pat on the back. I once again lashed out with the spatula. Both sides of his face were bleeding. One more thing, though. I know you joined the Young Swords back. Do you mind if I ask why? Sordlin was under attack by the commies. Franc raised his eyebrows, his curiosity still not satisfied, but sensing my reluctance to go on, he simply nodded. Sorry for bombarding you with questions. I know I complain sometimes, but my problems are nothing compared to what you went through. You're damn right, your generation will never understand. Here we go. Before Franc could say anything, I heard the front door unlock. The women showed up. Our bonding moment came to an end. You get some studying done before dinner. But thanks for this, Dad. I meant it. Franc went in and dashed upstairs. I think that meeting actually went a lot better than the other one, where I was trying to be his buddy. I'll link to my first playthrough at the end of this episode, if you want to check that out. It's a little more of a serious playthrough, I guess. I took a long sip from my beer looking at the city and now setting sun. I hope that talking to Franc about my past had been the right decision. Part of me felt as if some sort of burden had been lifted. I had the same nightmares again that night. Alright. New day in Sordlin. What else do we have to do? Narbel. Going to Narbel now. Why? Remember? Whatever, it's good to get out of the house. To the office. All this is about here. Prisoner riots in Antel Rock Prison. Yesterday around 11 a.m., a prison riot started in Ward C of the Antel Rock Prison, which was eventually suppressed. Ward C is generally used for keeping political prisoners, and the riot started when the warden was killed by a brutish political prisoner. 4 guards and 21 prisoners died. 134 were injured. Wow. Marna industrial output concerns. Mayor of Morna has reported that their industrial output numbers this year are 12% lower than last year. They're requesting additional support to improve their industrial capacity, including machinery and personnel, to combat the downward trend. The construction of several new factories in Morna, the mayor stated his belief that an economic upturn in the city is still possible if government investments succeed. According to current projections, Morna is set to lose an additional 2% of industrial output next year. However, recent data from the municipality suggests that an investment worth several billions of Sordish Rayne will stop the downward trend and increase the industrial output in a short amount of time. USP report on reforms. Many members of the USP, led by Elvin Clavin and the reformist wing of the party, clarified their demands for the government in the party Congress. For the upcoming constitutional reform, Elvin Clavin stated that without ministry reform, they won't be able to stand behind the new reform package that we killed, I thought. I guess we're not the only one trying to get some results out of that. Hackers opened fire on protesters. 17 dead. A man opened fire in Vesord City Center during a protest march organized by the Communist Party of Sordlin against the murder of Bernard Circus. The attacker used a military-grade machine gun dated 1929, which is suspected to be part of the inventory of the Sordish armed forces. The attacker killed himself right after shooting at 25 people, killing 16. He took out the weapon from the newsstand at the square, brandished it, and yelled, "Come, I will give you freedom." One witness said the highly charged word freedom was previously associated with Bluish separatists, but has been used widely during the previous month of protest against the murder of Bernard Circus. Lilias Graff said that she had spoken to the chief of Visord police and asked him to take strict action. The government will not tolerate any such incident, and the perpetrators will not be spared, she said. Gelsord FC, Enrica FC Derby postponed due to protest. One of the most anticipated matches between Gelsord and Enrica was postponed because of the intense protests in the city of Enrica. The league has issued, so they canceled a soccer game. Bummer. Non-democratic elections of Sordland. Sordland has an electoral threshold of 10%. This means any political party that is under 10% of the vote can't even enter the assembly. The very reason why the United Sordland Party holds 52% of the seats in the assembly today. Okay. Go to Narbel. I was traveling to the snow-covered city of Narbel in the Nargis region for the Rural Development Forum organized by the Ministry of Health and Ministry of Education. Mountainous city of Narbel had gritty tones to it. Mostly regarded as one of the poorer cities in Sordland. Sorry. Its people were hardy and wary. Even after the discovery of natural resources in the area, years of neglect by the central government were apparent on the buildings and the general infrastructure. Natural resources, namely gas and oil, were now under the control of Assam, which elevated the corporation to a place of power. This is one of the largest corporations in Sordland that extracts natural gas. It's ExxonMobil of Suzerain here. My task in this forum was mainly symbolic. Fake smiles and handshakes with oil barons meeting with local politicians, but most importantly of all, make sure that Narbel does not feel like it's forgotten by the government. Scenery so far, however, was a reflection of Narbel's neglect. Main roads to the city were not maintained well. There were many bumps and empty, discolored spots on the asphalt. Navigating and swerving to avoid the inconveniences, our motorcade finally started nearing the city. As if my discomfort from the bumpy ride was apparent to him, Serge rolled down the partition window. "We will be arriving at Hotel West in a few minutes, sir." "Can't say it's been a comfortable ride, Serge." "I'm sorry, sir, the roads here aren't the best." After a moment, Serge started to smile under his mustache. Pretend not to notice. "Sir, I just wanted to say it has been great these last 2 months. As you know, my wife Susan recently gave birth to our son, sir. Now my daughter just started at a very good high school in Holsord." "Congratulations." "I appreciate it, sir, truly. I was worried that I wouldn't be able to afford a good private school if she scored less in the entrance exams. But I shouldn't have made my insecurity get to me. Erica outsmarts me all the time. Very proud to have a daughter like her." "I also hope that Deanna will grow to be like her mother someday. So that means she must have taken the smarts after her mother. I do not value insecurity in my employees, Serge." He looked visibly irked by my comment and nodded. I think I just pissed off Serge, the nicest guy in the game. "Yes, sir, I will be more careful from now on." There was a long silence. After several minutes, Serge attempted to break the silence. "Have I told you, sir? He named my son George. Doctor said he is very healthy, and thankfully, so is my wife." "Why did you want another child? That's good. I hope the hospital has good service. Tell me more about Susan. What kind of person is she?" Very good. Must tend to my documents first. Stop talking to me. Drive the car." "Of course, Mr. President." Serge sighed. already started thinking about their university education, especially Erica. I want to send her to a good private school, but with the current state of the economy, it's going to be hard for her. Oh, this is where I can choose to pay for his kid's education. Hard for everybody. If anyone can fix the economy, that's you, Mr. President. Sorry, Serge, I'm not paying for your daughter's college this time around. Car hit a major pothole and a bump which lifted us out of our seats for a second. Instead of talking, can't you drive more carefully? I'm sorry, I will drive more carefully. Motorcade began approaching the hotel. Hotel West was supposedly the best hotel in Narbel. The large 25-story building, main building, was undoubtedly one of the taller and more expensive buildings in the city, towered over the nearby slums, and had been a target for protest when it was first built. A crowd was gathering in front of the hotel with the welcoming committee at its center. As we approached the red carpeted entrance, I could see the mayor of Narbel and his top aides. Serge got out of the car and opened the door. He bowed his head respectfully and gestured towards the entrance. See you later, Serge. Thank you, sir. Likewise. As soon as I left the vehicle, the fresh air of Narbel filled my lungs. Almost immediately, everybody present in the crowd flocked over to me with an excessive display of courtesy, smiles, and handshakes, while I donned the mask of a politician. A mask that I was very used to. Okay. We're in Narbel. We've got other things to do, too. Briefing on the current welfare situation in Narbel. Oh, we're here. Might as well do it. I arrived at the meeting room for my talk with Kira and Pascal. Before beginning, I took a moment to appreciate the view from the balcony. The mountains of Narbel were completely covered with snow. While I was mesmerized by the scenery, Pascal Beniwoll walked up to me. He's my Minister of Health. My Minister of Health, told you, was ironically somewhat portly, having gained a few pounds since his breakthrough as a best-selling writer, but his authority on social affairs could not be questioned. Such a spectacular view. Walda, the Minister of Education, joined us on the balcony, dressed in a sky blue pantsuit. Her preferences for trousers over dresses had made her the subject of much palace gossip. Tuck it away, baby, tuck it away. Spectacular indeed, but if you look at the opposite direction, you will see that Seoul's decades of neglect did to the city. Most of the people living in Narbel are workers, farmers, and their wives and children. They're breaking their backs for close to no pay, all thanks to greedy corporations. Whatever. I'd much rather be in Holsword right now. There we go. Our presence here will show that we still remember Narbel and other forgotten areas of our country, and important for the people. If you look past the view, you can see the real problems. Real problems like poverty. Pascal nodded gravely. This was a subject he knew quite a bit about himself. His best-known books were about the plight of Sordland's less fortunate, drawing from his own past growing up in squalor. Well put, Miss Walda. I don't need to tell you about my own experiences with poverty, and you've been through similar hardships yourself, Mr. President. All gone through difficult times. True, but some lives are more difficult than others, like ours was, and still is for the hundreds of thousands in Sordland. You don't have to be born poor to sympathize with the plight of the impoverished, much as you don't have to have been born a woman to recognize Sordland's need for parity among the sexes. Parity among the sexes shouldn't be our first priority. Look at how many high-ranking female politicians our country has, like you. Appearances can be deceiving, Pascal. Her voices sounded bitter. Think about how Lilius Graf got to her current position. Uh-oh. I don't want to know. I don't necessarily believe the rumors about her in Seoul. Well, there you go. but she never could have risen so high if she didn't parrot his cause. Oh, I guess probably get my mind out of the gutter. Gloria Torrey is in an accident that the first female assembly speaker is such a staunch conservative. And then there was Alfonso's habit of promoting women to prominent positions to give Sordland a progressive sheen while accomplishing nothing in reality. While women in places like Narbel are denied any opportunity to advance, the government can use a handful of female politicians from wealthy families, myself included, to pretend their only obstacle to success is their own lack of initiative. Meanwhile, those of us who don't use our clout to help powerful men stay in power are denigrated as angry spinsters. I ask you, Mr. President, does anyone care that your strategist, Mr. Glad, doesn't have a wife? Been wondering about that, actually. Leave Lucian out of this. Veered off topic. I mean, it's true. Mr. Beniwoll asked, I answered. As I was saying, isn't it about time Holsword addressed this country's real issues rather than bowing to the wishes of the hawks and the fearmongers in the establishment, and diverting yet more resources to the military and law enforcement? I disagree. Our welfare, healthcare, and education systems have been decaying since the recession. Portland's poorer communities are losing hope. God, she talks a lot. Hopelessness and lack of opportunity can drive people to extreme solutions. We're seeing increased crime, domestic violence, and yes, rising inequality between men and women. It must be tackled from a different direction. We need to engage it holistically. Only we could stop the recession, create jobs and growth. The capital must be prioritized towards the resources that matter the most. Lilius Graff will take care of crime. She's an expert on it. She certainly is a proven administrator. From what I heard, she reduced crime in Arbery by 40% during her mayoral term. I don't think brute force will get us anywhere. That's what you think. Look at where the tight grip of Tarkin Soul has gotten us. Tarkin Soul. There's another subject I want to mention. They've been working on improving the rights of workers in our country and have proposed a draft bill that is currently being reviewed by our party. Mr. Clavin has already backed me and given his support. Sordland has fallen behind most countries on this subject, and it is my responsibility to ensure this is not the case. Mr. Clavin's current member of our own party. Let's see, I agree we need to improve the standards of our workers. There's always room for improvement, and it's good to hear that you're pushing for it. Shouldn't upset the businesses who are already struggling to stay afloat in this crisis. Sounds like a costly bill for such a low priority issue. If the very lives of our workers aren't a priority, then what is? Our administration should be able to set a budget aside for these type of improvements. Only got one. It's also a matter of life and death. Every decade we hear of some horrific accident due to employers' disregard for their workers' safety. So would you back the bill when it arrives on your desk, Mr. President? I would be very interested in supporting it once it's finished. To make a decision, I would need to evaluate the contents in detail. I don't even know what they're talking about. Workers' safety or some shit like that. It's getting a little cold out here. Let's head inside and continue our discussions. Headed back inside. The meeting room was already prepared for state business. Small gifts for each of us had been placed on the table by the municipality. Our seats. Let's start with Pascal, the man. You go last. Where's the sandwiches? No sandwiches? Fired! As you wish, Mr. President. Sordland has a free healthcare system except for a few private hospitals operating under it. Most of the populace receives adequate treatment. Health issues primarily appear in rural areas due to lack of quality of service. I'm doing my best to ensure that citizens of all ages receive the best health care they can. I personally want to solve the high infant and maternal mortality rate. How many hospital beds are there per 10,000? What's the life expectancy and mortality rates? Our life expectancy is 65 years, and the infant mortality rate is a worrying 85 per 1,000. Oh, I'm going to say 85%? What the hell? Be assured that we are doing everything we can to save mothers and their newborns. Those numbers are saddening indeed. Do your best. We're working very hard on improving the quality of the services. Dismiss them out of hand. I don't want to hear anymore. How many doctors and nurses are employed? We have 31,594 doctors and 73,680 nurses. A high number. What I think is, I don't want to be rude, but out of those number, how many are in urban and rural areas? Not interrupt each other. That's not a problem. The number of doctors per 10,000 citizens is far lower in the rural areas compared to the urban areas. Treatment time is still too high due to the low number of doctors in rural areas, which gets barely any proper coverage. How many hospital beds are there per 10,000 citizens? There are 10 beds per 10,000 citizens, which is a very good number according to our comparison with other neighbors. We see a lower number in the countries of Agnolia and Wayland, but obviously can't match Lesbia or Volksland. Agnolia and Wayland are hardly countries to take as a standard, but it's good to know that we aren't in a huge crisis, health crisis. Thanks, Pascal. Want to hear about the education system? With pleasure. Sordish education is free, but we have a very outdated system that I want to reform. The other important issues is the lack of access to education in rural areas, especially for young girls. Your administration has the power to solve both problems. My highest priority is to get enough funding to be able to build schools in rural areas while I cleanse our education system of its nationalistic indoctrination and sexist teachings. But I'm a nationalist, so good luck with that. How many students and teachers do we have? Currently, there are about 5 million students, 3 million in primary, 1 million in secondary, and 1 million in tertiary. There are 155,000 teachers. Wow. Portland is full of young and bright minds. It is indeed full of potential for the Army. I think there needs to be a change in the way of thought. We should help children to question and educate themselves. What's the literacy rate of Sordland? Literacy rate of Sordland is at 80%. It's a very good indicator for future growth, but it needs to increase. It's also far lower among girls than boys. If I remember correctly, the most illiterate areas are Bergia and Agland. That's correct, although Lockhaven skews the statistics for the Nargis region, which also has a vast number of illiterate citizens. This underlines my point about the lack of access to education. Alright, that's good enough for now. I believe that's everything. Kira stood up and moved towards the window. She took a deep breath. What is it? I shouldn't have asked. A real douchebag wouldn't care. Look at this impoverished city. I told you I shouldn't have asked. Streets are full of potholes, the hospital's barely functioning, the school's half open. This is not just about Seoul or even Alfonso failing. This decay is Sordland's forgotten region. Has been going on for many decades due to structural corruption, which is fueled by capitalism. Oh well, now we're talking. Let's take over everything. Tarkin Sol did more for this country than any of us. I could shut her down. Let's not get into an ideological debate. We're here to change that trend. Stick with Tarkin Sol. I like the guy after all. Really? I must agree to disagree then. One way or another, we need to transform. Greed and unchecked capitalism will not magically provide for the people. What are your plans, Kira? My plan requires an increase in the government budget. Nope. I aim to solve the problems we highlighted with the allocated money. By building schools in these less fortunate rural areas and through fundamental change to the education system, I will unlock the potential of all our children, boys and girls alike. Quality of service problem. Our statistics show the disparity between urban and rural education. We can either do something about it or wait until it gets worse. Wouldn't a promotion of private education help create additional funds? Yes, but at what cost? I'm not a supporter of the private sector in education. Neither am I. Because at the end of the day, they are focused on profit first. Now, what are you working towards, Pascal? I personally want to improve the low quality of healthcare in rural areas. So I created a draft plan to increase the salary of doctors and to upgrade the equipment of the hospital. I can do more with the increased budget. Additionally, a privatization plan to promote private investment in the healthcare system could allocate extra funds. No. Although it would stand to reason that we could make some money off these things, I don't want to give up control. Quality of healthcare is less fortunate areas. Isn't access to healthcare in rural areas an issue? Access is an issue, but not as critical as equality in these areas. The lack of experienced personnel or equipment causes bad treatment, resulting in many deaths. I do hope to create competition and increase the quality of healthcare with the privatization effort. Private healthcare system would increase the price of treatment and make access worse for the average citizen. And we don't have as much control. Besides, I believe we decided to promote a more planned economy. Good point. Like you, dude. My expectations from our government is that we understand and focus on the needs of the people. We are elected representatives of our people and will prioritize their needs. There are other significant issues that we need to focus on, like security. I appreciate your briefings and plans. We will reconvene at the budget meeting. Minister Walda, I have bailed out people in need. I've bailed out people in need instead of business. Trust me, my priorities are correct. Well, there's, Rumberg. There have been a lot of negative developments lately. Way to see it my way. The same play in the same book. The security complex in the country keeps driving the agenda as usual. I think we covered all necessary subjects. Thank you for your time. I do hope we won't repeat the same mistakes again and again. Have a good day. Ministers left and I attended other official business in the city. Weather was relatively cold, but it didn't keep a group of USB supporters from coming out to cheer at us on the streets. Just by looking at the citizens' attire, it was easy to understand the current state of Narbel. Some people were wearing clothes a few sizes too large. Some kids did not even have shoes. Yet there was hope in their eyes. They were excited to see their president in their city. That's all that matters, that they were happy to see me. Well, the radicals got a lot to say. Protests wind down in Holsword. As protests continue nationwide, tensions ease in some cities. Still, several major cities, including Dyer and Lockhaven, did have some scattered reports of violence on Monday. The increased security measures in Holsword and the addition of thousands of new police officers have aided in curbing the protests in the capital. Similarly, violent protests and riots have ceased in numbers in most major cities. However, tens of thousands in Dyer, Circus' hometown, walked in a memorial march, though police moved in on the thinning crowd as the evening settled, making arrests. Police clash with protesters. They're just whining. I'll leave it there for a second. If you want to read it, you can pause. As police keep clashing with civilians in the nation in the first months of the Rayne's term. It's all part of the plan. Shocking misogynist rally. Every day we are appalled by how deep the roots of misogyny goes in our country. We're appalled again when yesterday during a protest the Sordish League of Women, counter-protesters showed up to disrupt the peaceful rally. In the resulting scuffle between the police, the protesters, and the mob, many were arrested from both sides. Sol needs to answer for his crimes. Looking at the history of everything wrong with our country, there's only one figure that everyone points at, and Sol. He has devolved our country into something much worse than what it was before. He has committed crimes against humanity. We all still remember the ISM incident and the wounds that have been inflicted on the hundreds of thousands of people with Bluish ethnic background. The ISM incident was a bloody protest that occurred in 1933. It is largely regarded as one of the foundational moments of the Bluish movement. Wow, that's a lot to read. They really did their homework on this. So there was a dam, and the past is the past. Labor Union's Rights March. Large group of labor union members gathered around the city of Valjean to protest against the poor conditions of workers' rights in Sordlin. Education privatization proven successful. Our editorial team immediately analyzed the SIPA report recently revealed to assess the standards of education. We are curious to see how the policies of the last decade have begun changing the performance metric. So basically, privatizing education is good, at least according to The Economist. They may be right, but I'm not going to do it. What's next? A whole lot. Ooh, an emergency decree. That sounds exciting. Well, might not have been the most exciting episode here. I had a budget meeting and a barbecue with Franc. But it is what it is. It moves our story forward. I think you can kind of see where I'm headed in terms of where our budget's going to go. It's going to go towards military and security. Everything else is going to kind of have to wait. So I think Rumberg is going to be a threat, especially with my character's persona as it is. So we're going to focus on that going forward. Anyway, if you like the episode, hit the like button. If you have any tips or advice, general thoughts, let me know what you think in the comment section below. If you want to follow along with Emperor Rayne down there, as he hopefully doesn't lead Sordlin to destruction, hit the subscribe, and we will see you for our next episode. J76NY saying thank you very much for watching, and have yourself a very good day.